Hi everybody! Thank you so much for choosing to join me on my channel today. My name is Jennifer and this is Pray Girl. I'm so excited to be able to share with you the second part of the interview that I did of my husband. So it's me interviewing my husband. Yeah, he wants to say hi. Hi, I don't think this is very professional, baby boy. This is my intro. So if you already saw part 1, then you know that we answered some of the questions that you asked on Instagram, and in this video, we'll be answering the rest. So we're really excited about that. Before we begin, I just want to say, I think I made it very clear in my last video that we are not therapists, but I'll just go ahead and repeat it, just in case. We're not therapists. We're speaking only through the experience and the wisdom that we've acquired through being married for 8 years, having 2 beautiful children, and be missionaries here in Helena, Montana. So 2 things I want to mention before we begin are that when I was editing this video, I noticed that we reference part 1 a lot. So if something doesn't seem to make sense, some reference that we make, that might be why. And then the second thing is that I divided the questions in this video into 2 parts. The first part is finishing up with my husband's perspective, and then some of the questions that we got, I divided them into another part, and then I named it relationship questions because I think that they're more straightforward questions rather than being my husband's perspective on it. It's really what makes a healthy relationship and how to cultivate a healthy relationship. So those questions I named relationship questions, and you guys will be able to tell when we make the switch from perspective questions to relationship questions. Lastly, I just want to thank you all for joining us, and then I also want to say that it means so very much to me that you would trust us enough, that you would trust me enough to send me your questions through Instagram. Thank you so much. There are some questions in this video that we answered that pertain a little bit to feeling insecure as a woman with our changing bodies, as we're aging and we're having children. And I just wanted to tell you that if there's anything that I can help you with, I've been there myself. So if there's anything that you want to message me about or that I can help you with, I would love to talk to you. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to me. And now, without further ado, let's get into the questions. What is a virtuous wife to you? Before you continue, this is going to be from your perspective. How would you describe her?
Prudent, hardworking, and always striving. I think that we're not born virtuous. We learn how to be polite, we learn manners as we're growing up, but then once we kind of have a very basic understanding of what these things are: patience, loving kindness, the consistent striving to carry them out in your life is what it means to be virtuous, in my opinion. So in a virtuous wife implies married, and so if you're a virtuous wife, then you're, to put it plainly, I guess it would be, I don't think virtuous is perfect. I think virtuous is always striving, where you don't repeat the same mistakes, but that you're striving to overcome them. You're honest with yourself, to where we all make mistakes, but we want to improve. And so always striving for improvement would be, in my opinion, a virtuous wife and a virtuous husband.
I love that. Okay, next question. What does a husband really think about his wife's changing body, like with kids and aging? And does it make him love his wife any less? And does it make him any less attracted to her?
What does a husband think about his wife's changing body? That it's natural. Men don't have kids, but we also age. That's part of life, and it does not make a husband love his wife any less, but it can make a man less attracted to his wife. A wife who has children is still a beautiful woman, even if she just had babies. That has nothing to do with her level of attractiveness. Her caring about how she looks, and it could look differently to different people. It can be things like eating healthier or trying to get some exercise. If it shows that you care and that you're striving towards improvement, I think that that's attractive to your husband. It doesn't change love, but it can change the relationship dynamic in that sense, where is your husband still proud to go out with you and happy to be seen with you? It will vary from husband to husband. It's important to talk about it, be honest with each other, and then come up with a plan for moving forward. The more sure you feel of yourself, the better you will perform. Yeah, that's perfect word. Whatever helps you get there, because like I said, the most important thing is the love, and that doesn't change. How well we treat each other, how caring we are towards each other, that will either strain or nourish our relationship. And it's the same thing with the changing body. You don't have to over worry about it, because that's a superficial thing that can change. It can improve, and if you don't care, it can not improve. But the underlying important stuff, that doesn't waver easily, and we can only build on top of it with a good plan and good goals and things like that.
So the next question says, my husband doesn't make me feel affirmed as a wife. How can I encourage him to tell me I'm beautiful, etc., when I want it to come from a sincere place, but I also need to hear it more often? So I think that what she's going through is she feels like she needs to be affirmed and to hear affirming words from her husband more often, but she wants it to come from a sincere place, not because she's telling him to.
I'm sorry if this sounds repetitive, but you have to be honest with each other about what you're looking for out of your relationship. So this is going to seem like a very minor thing, but for me, for example, if I come home, and I know she mentioned it earlier about the fixing up. To me, if I come home and the house is clean, she looks so beautiful to me, and I will tell her that.
True.
I'm like, this is so amazing. You're the best, because that to me is a huge deal, because I tend to be a very organized person. So when the house looks like that, it's just mind blowing. That's the way I am, and it might seem weird, and your husband might be completely different. He might like something like a good meal, or if you both work, that like you buy him something. Like every man is different as well, and so you do have to be honest to find out what it is that in your husband's eyes will make you the most attractive and make him want to express like
Praise you.
Yeah, his praise for you and like his gratefulness towards you. So that's the very first thing that comes to mind, is figure out what it is that gets him, because what you are doing already might not be what he's looking for. And then the other thing is that if your husband is more introverted like I am, which in our relationship was a bit of a strain. Sometimes I would think things, but I wouldn't tell them to her, not because I didn't want to, just because that was my nature. So if I thought, oh, you look so beautiful today, I wouldn't always say it, but not because I didn't think it, but because expressing it wasn't as important to me as it was to her, or as it is to her. So I know that in the question there's the word sincere in there. Sometimes she would have to ask me, and I would say it, but even though she asked me, it wasn't that I didn't say because I wasn't sincere or I didn't mean it. It was just because to my personality, expressing it wasn't important. Again, we're different. So sometimes it takes practice for one partner to understand what is important to the other partner. So just as it was important for me for the house to be very well tidied up, it was important for her to hear me be expressive in what I thought about it and things like that. It wasn't right away, because I wasn't used to it. I wasn't used to saying it, and so
it was a long process.
I had to practice. I wasn't used to doing it. So be patient. I would say be a little bit more patient. Understand that even if you get there by force, it's not by force. It's just learning
even if
each
it
other.
Feels that way.
Yeah, even if it feels that way, it's not.
Okay, and that's generally speaking.
Generally speaking.
And I think that's so good, because I think that generally we're wired differently as women and as men, and most wives want to hear praise from their husband. I think that's just like the general rule. I did have to have that conversation with him a few times, and then even after that, sometimes I'll ask him, how do I look in this? And he'll say good. I'll say, okay, how does my hair look? And he'll say fine. But just the fact that
It's true. I'm working on it.
But to me, it just means so much that you try. When you do tell me, it means so much more because I know that it's hard for you to remember, and I know that that's you putting effort into our relationship. So with that said, mindset is really important, and just having patience, I think that can get you where you want to be.
It takes work sometimes.
It does. It does take work. But with God's help, we can all get there. Okay. Next question. How important is date night, and how often do you do it, and how often do you recommend it?
It is very important. For example, even something like this, I would consider date night because I'm enjoying being here talking with her, and so this is good to me because the kids aren't here. Do something that you guys enjoy doing together as often as you can. Sometimes money is
an issue.
Like,
babysitters, money, just finding the time. You need to cultivate that time with each other.
it goes back to prioritizing each other. If you want to go out for dinner and do something at the park together, whatever it is you guys want to do, you don't want to put aside responsibilities,
Right.
but you want to block out time for each other and to spend with each other doing things you enjoy. We do it maybe once a week, I would say pretty consistently, where we do things like this or watch something together or do something together. And if you can do it more often, that's great.
So as often as you can do it
Responsibly.
and spend quality time with each other. It's never the same thing like when we're talking than when we're just sitting there watching something.
Yeah, that's true.
So spend quality time with each other. That's so good. How do you deal with jealousy and insecurities?
Oh man.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. Thankfully, I have not dealt, I think, with insecurities and jealousy. Insecurities, yes. Jealousy, not for a while. I think that I was more of the jealous type before we got married. After we got married, I kind of felt more at ease because in my mind, she's stuck with me for life, and so that kind of made my jealousy tendencies go down for the most part. But insecurities, I want to make the disclaimer that this is a very male perspective, and so for me, insecurities are just things I have to work on. So if I feel insecure about the way I look, I feel like I have to eat healthier, maybe work out more often, or begin working out. And so for me personally, as long as I have a plan as to what I feel insecure about and what I'm going to do about it, that helps me feel better. And then as long as I carry out the plan, that helps me continue to feel better. For me, just having goals and a work plan helps a lot. I want to disregard the jealousy question.
Okay.
I don't think it's easy to get over jealousies, and I don't think that it's always recommended that you just ignore, because I think, again, very male perspective, but I think that jealousy is a greater manifestation of insecurities. So from my point of view, you can do something about it. You can turn to God, trust Him with it.
Amen.
And see, for me, I was looking for a partner, a spouse, whom I felt also prioritized God in the same way, because if you prioritize God, there are things that are just unacceptable in the eyes of God, and infidelity is one of those things. And so the closer you are to God, the more likely you are to be faithful, not only to God but to each other, because it's so important before the eyes of God. And so turn to God if you feel jealous. Trust Him with it. Sometimes we don't tell God what we feel or that we feel things, but God made us. If you share our faith, God made us. He knows us very well, and sometimes He's just waiting for us to express, to unload those things so that He can help us with them. So
I love that. Philippians 4:6. I don't know. I love that. That's so good.
it's a good verse.
Okay, next question. This one's a little bit difficult, and I think that a single person was asking this question for
Okay.
the future. Okay. It says, how do you stay faithful amidst so much temptation, including non-physical temptation, virtual as well? So I think they were referring to pornography and so purity. How do you stay faithful?
How do I stay faithful? I think it has a lot to do with mindset. What are you trying to get out of your relationship? First of all, with God, faithfulness is not just a betrayal of a partner, it's a betrayal of God. Or unfaithfulness is what I meant to say, is a betrayal, ultimately. I understand that it's very difficult because it's just a very basic carnal thing
and it's everywhere now.
to be unfaithful, or to be distracted, I would say. What I mean by mindset is that if it was a single person, you can't be blessed and sinning at the same time. And if it's your marriage, you're robbing your marriage of your relationship, because you can't serve two masters. You can't be faithful to your partner and faithful to sin. And unfaithfulness and pornography and all of these things distract you from putting work into your relationship. It's going to be very difficult for you to build up. And I know you might think like I'm making it sound like you're in a relationship with infidelity, because you are. It takes your energy, it takes your focus, it takes your attention and diverts it from your partner. You can't nurture both those relationships at the same time. What do you want? What is it that you are looking for, and where are you looking for it? If you want a good, solid, strong relationship with your partner, then you have to focus on it and prioritize it. And I know I'm sorry if we sound repetitive, and I'm sorry if I said that multiple times already,
but it's that important.
It's that important. If you want to be successful here, you have to deny yourself those other things.
So it sounds like just being very mindful and intentional. I just had to pull up this verse because I think it applies so well here. And it's in 1 Peter 5:8. It says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." Sorry guys, it's getting late and we're getting tired, but I think that this is exactly what you're talking about. What you're watching, how you're spending your time.
No.
So just being mindful and sober.
Be more mindful towards what is true and better. And so,
what is the reason people keep falling out of love?
Okay.
Did I catch you by surprise?
Yeah, it's a very intense question.
It is a very intense question.
Why do people fall out of love? Honestly, that we're misunderstanding love to an extent.
Okay.
Biblically, love is selflessness. If you are selfless towards somebody, if you care for them and look after them and try to please them, then you're loving them. That's love. But contrary to that, if you are selfish when you're with someone, then you're not loving them. So you don't fall out of love. Your love is dictated by your actions. If you don't want to be selfless towards that person, then you will naturally grow apart. Actually trying to empathize, be kind, respectful, and please that person. I don't think you fall out of love. I think you stop caring about a relationship and then drift apart. The thing that might change, as we mentioned in one of the previous questions, is the level of attraction you have for one another. The attraction it isn't only physical, but if you choose not to look for the things that you have in common, then you're not showing them any love, and so you drift apart. And so why do people fall out of love? Because they stop caring. But the good thing about that is that you can try and you can choose to care.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is no relationship is beyond repair.
No, I don't think so. There's a reason I say this. There are estranged families whom, all they have is that they're blood relatives, and they will be apart for years, 10, 20, 30, siblings not speaking to each other, parents not speaking to children, But when you choose to put those things aside and say, well, it's my brother, well, it's my sister, that relationship can be mended much more. Someone whom you are, I don't know if this is still PG-13, but if you're intimate with somebody, then there's so much more that you can work on because you can be honest with each other, and the blood relation is not really a thing. You just have it in you to say, well, that's my blood relative, and so I'll work it out. And
Right.
people do work it out. You can choose to work it out with anybody.
Right. And I think it's so important to know each other's love language. For example, my love language would be words of affirmation, and your love language is, I believe, acts of service. So I could just be affirming you and telling you how much I love you, but if I'm not actually cleaning the house, then it's not then it's not translating as love to you. And I think that that's a good place to start. If you feel like you've been estranged, if you feel like your relationship needs repair, there's a quiz you can actually take if you just Google what's my love language, and then you guys can learn what your love language is, and then just take it from there. And with prayer, first and foremost, no relationship is beyond repair.
Something can, with carelessness, die eventually,
Right.
but it's not something that happens overnight, and it's not
Right.
something that's irreversible.
Like, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and then just feel like I'm not in love with you anymore,
Right.
or vice versa. This relationship really needs time and care. You're supposed to cultivate it, and that is the reason that you keep mentioning prioritizing it and working on it. I heard somewhere, and I thought it was just such a good line: no good marriage happens by accident or luck. You have to work for it. How do you keep the love of life in a relationship? I think we kind of answered that already with past
Throughout the
questions.
video, we will have answered this question. Prioritize it. You look for ways to be selfless towards one another and to help and support one another. It's going to be a back and forth, and so it keeps the whole thing in an endless blissful cycle.
When you say be selfless towards each other, I don't want somebody listening to think, okay, well, I haven't slept. Let's say a wife, I haven't slept. I've been with the baby all night, and now I'm gonna get up extra early and make him breakfast every morning, even though I'm so tired and I've had no time to take care of myself and actually recuperate in my sleep. I know that sounded really explicit.
That's very specific.
I just came up with that.
What I mean by selfless is you put yourself aside to understand your partner better, in the very specific example that she just gave. Like me, for example, having my wife get up early and make breakfast is not a priority to me because I can just make something or eat something myself. That is a big sacrifice on her behalf. It would be appreciated by me, but it doesn't have the impact that it might have for her to just stay in bed and recover and feel better. When I get home from work, having the kids be fed already, that's very important to me. So if she wants to be selfless, it's not just sacrifice for the sake of sacrifice, thinking not of myself but of the other person in what I do. Does that kind of explain it?
I think so. Part of being a virtuous person is sometimes initiating in the good that we know to be. So if I know that my husband appreciates whatever it may be, I want to be selfless. So that I don't want anybody to think that selfless means I'm putting myself aside entirely and not taking care of myself.
Okay.
So in short, just make sure your cup is full before you want to pour into your husband and your children and to the rest of your responsibilities. You have to be okay. What are some ways you can reconnect when there's been an emotional disconnect in a relationship?
Communicating with each other what it was that caused the disconnect, to understand what happened, and then setting again those clear expectations with what you would like moving forward. What are you looking for out of your marriage? What are you looking for out of each other? Being respectful, being loving, being kind in the way you address the issue. There's no getting around it. You do have to address it and talk to each other.
In a marriage, how much should each spouse contribute financially and emotionally to the relationship?
100%. 100%. What I mean by that is that you're both putting the same into it, and then you're taking the same out of it. Financially, for example, I don't think separating is always ideal. We're both putting into our lives, you know, so
Yes.
so we put into our lives 100%, and then what has to come out of it? Well, house payment, car payment, bills, all those things have to come out of this that we've already put together. After this has been put into it, then maybe there's a personal interest that I have, there's a personal interest that she has. We have to take back out of it in the same amount because we put into it the same amount. Maybe not the same money amount, but the same percentage, 100%. At least financially, I think that's the best way to approach it, because you're gonna take out of your relationship what you sow, what you put into it. If you're sowing division, eventually you'll reap division. If you sow secrecy and barriers of this is mine, that's yours, then that's what you're gonna have in the future as well. So at least financially, I think that's what makes the most sense, to go in 100% and then
Come up with an amount.
decide from there. Like, if I want to save up for this, if you want to save up for that, that's perfectly fine.
Right.
But you take out of what's already been put together, deposited. Not I keep and then I put in the rest. Again, that's sowing division. And then emotionally, 100% as well. Now, I do think that does have a small caveat in that it's easier for some than for others. And so if you have different gifts in your marriage, you're going to contribute in different ways. But that doesn't mean that anyone is excused from working on it and from contributing. It just means like that, for example, there are things that I learned once I was already married, because I'm not an expressive person. Communication, emotion-wise, does not come naturally to me. So it's something that I had to learn, but I think that my wife appreciates my effort, you know, because I do care about our relationship and I do want to contribute as much as she's contributing, but it's something that she was naturally better at than I was. So I do think that she's taught me, and so by definition she's maybe put into it more. We're both 100% invested, and we want 100% to put in everything that we can.
Yes. You have to remember you're a team, guys. So I think
the
that
best team.
So I think that if you're thinking about like amount wise, you know, when you're thinking about it financially, that can get really dangerous. You know, one person or the other person can end up feeling like their effort is in vain or just bad in any sense. That's not something that you want. You're a team. You're working to build a life together.
Money's just a tool. It's supposed to help your marriage. You're supposed to be able to invest it into your marriage so that your marriage prospers.
That's so good. Last question. How do we make a marriage thrive, not just survive?
Communication.
Yes.
And prayer. Yeah.
If you'll allow me to say, I think that it's so important for both of us to remember that we're individuals. So we both have to make sure that we're cultivating a relationship with ourselves and with God, and then we can come together and cultivate this relationship. But I think that in order for your marriage to thrive, you have to focus on yourself, improving, and mainly your relationship with God. And then you can come together with your husband, and out of that nourishment that you've given your soul, that you've given your spirit, then you can pour into your relationship. And I think that that's the best way to make a marriage thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like you agree. Well, I think that concludes our questions. Misael, I just want to say thank you so much for being here with me. It means the world to me. And I know that you're super tired, so God pay you and God bless you.
Well, I appreciate that you had me here. I think it's great that people feel comfortable enough to ask these questions.
I appreciate it so much.
And I think it's amazing, like I've already told you, that you're creating this resource.
We really have such a heart for this, guys, and we really, really care. We really want to help. As missionaries, we've been able to see so much and hear so much from people, and it's given us just a greater heart for this, to be able to help in any way that we can. So thank you so much for your questions. They were great. God bless you and God pay you all. Bye.
I think.
I hope so. Oh, baby, I know you're so sleepy. I appreciate it. I'm sorry. I know you're tired. You look so sexy. You look so sexy with your red eyes. I appreciate you so much. My husband's gonna be so brave because he's so tired.
Let's do this.
You think we were clear enough?
No.
No, me either.